Welcome to another episode of Teen Minds Redefined, where we really strive to redefine the relationships we have with our teenagers by diving into all the issues that they are dealing with and allowing us to support them in any way we possibly can. And today we meet Dru Ahlborg, a mother, an advocate, and the driving force behind BRRC. The driving force behind BRRC, a charity dedicated to defending bullied children and helping them rebuild their lives across Colorado. And as a parent who has experienced devastating effects of bullying firsthand, Dru has turned her passion into action, working tirelessly to educate families and schools while holding institutions accountable. Welcome, Dru, to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited because, there's this. First, I want you to tell your story about how you got to where you are today and why, what your mission is, what your passion is. Let's talk about that first, because I think that the energy behind what it is you're doing is, the driving force is really specifically on point.
Absolutely. So, and that was the driving force. Now, I'll say the driving force today is all those families we get to work with. So, but like a lot of nonprofit leaders, I got into this out of experience. My son was relentlessly bullied in middle school. It was verbal, it was physical, it was relational, and I can talk about what relational is later. Did not involve really just one instance of cyberbullying. But it got so bad that my son no longer wanted to go to school. We reported it to the school. They said they'd take care of it. And lo and behold, they really never did anything. So through the course of a lot of things, we ended up removing him from the school and placing him somewhere else. And we filed a lawsuit, which I can't talk a lot about. What we found out a lot more things about how egregious the school was, how our son had told us a lot about what was happening, but he didn't tell all of it to us. It wasn't until we were in depositions, he was deposed for 8 hours, that we found out he was physically bullied on a daily basis. We had no idea. I think that was a thing he was going to take to his grave. And it was right after that we settled. But through the course of that experience, as well as we were on the news, and I only mention that because they aired our story in Denver, Colorado, which is where our organization is. But then they aired it in a lot of different places in the country. We had families contacting us from all over the place, thinking we knew what we were doing, and if we could help them, we could share experience with them, but we weren't experts at the time. So we settled the lawsuit and we decided to become experts. And through the course of all that, we met a bullying expert who happens to live in Colorado, and she's been on our board ever since. And we learned about what bullying is, what it isn't, why it needs to be addressed, why it needs to be addressed by adults. We learned about Colorado state laws in regards to bullying, harassment. We're not lawyers, we're not mental health professionals, but we did learn a lot about the mental health. And I can tell you from personal experience, mental health, these kids suffer greatly a lot of times, especially if it's not dealt with. And I can mention my son was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and he did try to take his life. He has a physical disability with fine motor skills. He can't tie a knot, so that's what ended up saving him. So, all these years later, he is now in college. He's going to start his senior year. He's doing great. He's done a lot of recovery. So there is hope at the end of all this. It does take time, but we decided we wanted to fill that hole. Like, what do you do when the bullying starts? Like, where do you go? Who's going to tell you like how to report it and things like that? That's what we attempt to do. And we've done that with over 500 families in Colorado since 2018.
Wow. I'm so sorry about your son to even have to experience any of that. That's very, his fine motor skills, saving him is just, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's kids, right? And this is the
Mhm.
point of all of these conversations. Like, I'm not sure when you're on the peripheral if you actually know the impact. And I want to even talk about, to start, the evolution of bullying. I've been in public education since 1986, so I might have been 8 years old when I started teaching.
I was going to go with 6, but
Okay, I love it. But then it was, I'm gonna meet you outside the doors at the gym doors. I'm gonna beat you up because I don't like your shoes, or I don't like the way you looked at my friend. And 99% of the time, that never even happened. It just set, the fear of God into you for the day, which was the whole point.
Mhm.
And then you went home, and then it was done.
Exactly.
And then it became, then there became weapons involved. It wasn't just pushing and shoving in words, then weapons became involved. And then social media got involved, like this whole evolution of bullying. And we see it every single day. We see it in the American politics. We see it in the debates. We see it, even in these, people get into these Facebook communities for support, like specific communities for support. And it never fails. You see somebody that takes a word and it goes down this rabbit hole of anger and judgment and, like,
Yeah.
bullying, where people just literally go to a specific place for support. Like, it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
And so let's start with, like you said at the beginning, what bullying is and what bullying isn't. Let's start there.
That's a great place to start. The definition I usually refer to, and there's a few definitions out there. It's from stopbullying.gov, and it is let's see, physical. No, I'm getting it wrong. Anyways, it involves three things that are involved with bullying: is an imbalance of power, it is an intent to harm, and is a potential, or it can be repeated or the potential to be repeated. So that bullying expert I talk about quite often, she will say, because a lot of times schools will say it hasn't been repeated, it's happened once. You put a kid's head in the toilet once, that's bullying, right? It's
Yeah.
usually someone stronger, bigger, whatever that does that. That's the imbalance of power as well. So those are the things that we need to look for. Is it, conflict. So Cheryl, you and I might get into a disagreement, and it might even be really heated, right? Maybe it's
Yeah.
about the Bronco game that happened on Saturday. I'm not a huge football fan, but maybe I don't like the linebacker, you like the linebacker. We're really angry, but we're two equal parties. And hopefully, as adults, one of us, like, I will see the look in your eye, like, I'm done. And I'll back off. I'm like, you know what? Let's just agree to disagree. Something, or maybe it'll take someone else coming in going, ladies, it's not that big a deal. And we're like, yeah, you're right. Whatever. You're wrong. You're wrong and I'm right. But, it's still that it's not an imbalance of power. It's you and I having a conflict.
Yeah.
That a lot of times kids can deal with on their own, or maybe they can be coached through it with an adult. But bullying has to be stopped because it's that imbalance of power, and it has to be an adult. Now, kids can intervene, and they can make it stop for the moment. But to really to make sure that behavior stops altogether, it has to be an adult. So, those are the three things we look at to make it bullying. And, conflict, there's great conflict resolution tactics out there, but they never work with bullying. And you probably know that too, being in the school system so long.
Yeah. And I wonder, most of my listeners are parents of teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And, I did high school for 25 years and then went into private school for 2 or 3 years as I ended off my career. And so the private school was grades 7 to 12. And I was astounded by the bullying that was happening in the grade 7s. And
Yes.
sorry, gender specific, the girls.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
whole mean girl thing,
Mm.
and I know it's not just gender specific. I'm just telling you what I noticed in the
Mm-hmm.
grade 7. And I was just floored, like floored. When does this start? Like typically, when do we start seeing, is it grade 1? Is it grade 5? Is it grade 7? When does this start becoming a thing for kids?
Well, I can tell you statistics say that it peaks in middle school. So you're absolutely right. Grades 6 and 7 seem to be the worst. We've worked with families with children that are 5 years old. So I think it's important to say that bullying is a learned behavior. We're not born looking at the world going, you're a different color, therefore I don't like you. You speak differently. I don't like you. You worship something differently. I don't like you. That's that's not how we were born. That's learned. We learned that from possibly our families, our church, sporting teams, whatever.
Mhm.
Media, it hit that on the nose too. So of course, these children, young adults are learning that people get away with this all the time. Why we watch every day almost. I watch a politician bullying somebody else. It's horrific. So if this person can get away with it, why can't I? I don't like that person because of the color of their hair. I'm going to say something. Um, so if it's learned, other things can be learned too, and I truly believe that. And I don't when I talk about bullying, and I call it a bullying behavior. I don't call children bullies
Mhm.
because I don't want to label that. If
Yes.
they have an opportunity to still change, they can learn. Um, I think a lot of kids can learn empathy. Like, wow, there's one. My son was bullied by multiple, and it was all boys at his school. And one of them, when it came out in the media, he called my son up. He said, "I had no idea I harmed you so bad." And he was honestly I could probably rank the five. He was probably fifth out of the five. And, he apologized and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." And he just kind of went in with the flow, right? It was a gang of kids and he was just kind of hung out and participated. So he had an opportunity to learn. He might not do that again as he grows older. So we have an
Mm.
opportunity to learn kindness and inclusivity and empathy. And schools that have a culture and teach that in the classrooms, it's modeled by the administrators, by the teachers, by the school bus driver.
Yeah.
To be kind and considerate to others, that will have a lasting effect. That's another learned behavior. Kids can learn from their school bus driver how to be kind and say hello to people every day.
Yeah.
So we're all in this together. And I no longer have kids that are school age anymore. But I come in contact obviously with families all the time that are just struggling. It's just horrible.
I feel like we take these roles in life and there's a payoff. What is
Yeah.
the payoff for the bully? What is the actual payoff? What are they getting?
Well, so like I said, it's a learned behavior. And that old saying, and I believe it so wholeheartedly, that hurt people hurt people. There's probably something going on with that child. And I believe it's a power, it's a way to gain power. I'm going to tell you another story about my son. So he was bullied in seventh grade, and I believe it was when he was in high school. No, I'm sorry, it was when he was in eighth grade. He turned around and cyberbullied somebody else. It was horrific. And lo and behold, I've done the research. Kids that are bullied will sometimes turn around and bully somebody else, and it's all about power. Now, what we did is when we found out what happened, we took it to the school and said he needs to have a consequence, right? It happened here, so you have to dole out the consequence. We'll take care of things at home. Um, and they didn't want you because they knew his story, but we really like, no, he has to learn, right? There has
Yeah.
to be, you do A, you have to pay the crime. So he got a consequence and he made a public apology to the girl. He asked, "How do you want me to apologize?" And she said, "You can do it in front of me and my friends." So he did that. She said, "I never want to talk to you again." Fair enough, right? He said, "Okay, I can do that too." But he got an opportunity to be made whole.
Yeah.
He learned that his behavior was incredibly hurtful. He had a consequence and then he can move on. So he was whole. She was, she got someone that never talked to her again, which is what she wanted. And fair enough, right?
Yeah.
And she got a public apology and he didn't do it again. And so it's important, it's some of it's power, some of it, I think kids are sometimes treated possibly by sibling, parents, aunt, uncle, grandparents, inappropriately at home. And it's a
Mhm.
way to turn around and be powerful over somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. So what signs, not all our kids are very forthcoming. They don't come home and sit and have your roast beef dinner and talk about everything that happened at school. Usually it's, how was your day? Fine. Did you do anything? No. Any homework? But there's got to be some telltale signs for our
Hmm.
kids. What are we looking for when they come home?
So great question. I went through that too. How was your day? Good. Those, and so I instruct parents use those open-ended questions. But the signs that something might be going on, bullying or something, is those big shifts. The child no longer wants to go to school. I'm going to quit my soccer team. I don't want to play soccer anymore. The hangouts or play dates dry up. Um, they could become depressed. They spend a lot more time in their room, and I know teenagers kind of do that anyways. However, if it's a big shift, really sudden, their eating habits change. They eat a lot less, or they eat a lot more, with no physical thing going on. Those can all be signs that something is going on, and that's when you probe a little bit more. Don't ask those closed-ended questions, but those open-ended questions. Who'd you eat lunch with today? What's your favorite class? What's your least favorite class? Tell me why. What's going on there? And I got more information out of my kids when they were younger, when I drove them mostly home from school.
Yeah.
It's where we didn't have to look at each other, and they were either in the back seat or side by side, and they could. That's how my son eventually started telling me, "I don't like it here anymore. I don't want to go to school. What's going on?" Well, so and so, this happened at lunch or whatever. Um, and so it's slowly, and I tell parents too, boy, it's when they start talking about it, it's slow to come out. It's in eyedroppers. It's these little doses. And my husband and I kind of figured out that home was like the only safe place for my son. And so he's kind of testing us. Boy, if I tell him that, are they still going to support me? Are they still going to love me? Are they still going to listen? So he kind of these little, and like I said, it wasn't until deposition where he was deposed for 8 hours that we found out like how it was every single day. We knew the verbal was every single day, but so was the physical. And I'm sure there was so much shame for him that he was physically assaulted every single day. So, it's and it's okay. He just, sometimes it takes us a while to talk about our trauma. And boy, and I tell our parents too, if they say, hey mom, I need to talk to you, you close the computer, you turn off the phone, you turn off the TV, and you listen and you listen. You don't have to respond. You don't have to, and you tell them that together you're going to come up with a solution. You'll walk through it together. Um, that if you can, don't freak out. Like I wanted to go kill somebody, and that's not the appropriate action either, right? Just sit and listen and let them know they've done nothing to deserve it. And, everything between the family, you're going to take care of it together. They're going to be part of the solution.
That whole, it's so important to know that they're going to give you these little test bites. Can I trust them? Can I trust them? Can I trust them? It's so important. And to listen, and I know, there's a lot of times where you could just say, can you tell me more? Is there any more? Is there any more? Because then their brain starts going, oh, maybe there's more. He automatically starts looking for more
Mm-hmm.
without that judgment. And I love that. I used to drive my kids everywhere for that reason. And, even if you happen to, if they do have a friend, get the friend in the back seat too, because they forget you even exist.
Yeah.
And the conversations they have, like, I wish I could take notes while I was driving, but yeah, that car, I think that's, certainly I feel like that's common knowledge for a lot of parents too. Like, just offer to do the drive. I know you feel like a taxi driver. It will pay off every time. It's, yeah. So you start to see the signs. I almost want to go chronologically because I don't know who's listening and where they're at in the journey.
Yeah.
And, maybe we even back up a little bit to, are there signs that your kid is acting like a bully?
Sure. So some of them can be the same signs, right? Like a big change, sleep patterns, eating, things like that. But a lot of aggression, um, you know, uh, depression can be part of that too. Both sides, right? So any of those things, it's time to ask those open-ended questions. But yeah, signs that your kid might be participating in bullying behavior, aggression, anger, not liking school. There again, the kids don't want to come over. Things like that it can all be signs too.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, just as we're saying that, is there a way to show our kids, if we're concerned that they are acting like the bully, is there a way to show them what bullying behavior actually looks like, to see if they can recognize that in themselves?
Sure. I mean, it's you know this this is where empathy comes in play too. Like, what would you feel like if people called you names every day? And how would you feel if someone tripped you in the hallway? How would what would you want to happen? And those kind of things. You can talk it through. Sometimes you need possibly to get a mental health professional involved.
Mm.
Sometimes getting that kid involved in different activities. Maybe they need to go do more sports, or a church group or something, to get to start building friendships and things like that. But it's very important to pay attention to those behaviors too. And just like that child learned to do those behaviors, they can learn different things too.
Yeah.
They can learn empathy. And empathy is the antithesis to bullying. When I have some compassion for somebody, especially somebody that's not like me, that's that's where bullying doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Someone looks completely different than me, or talks differently than me, or worships differently than me, and I have curiosity and acceptance for them. Then the bullying's not going to happen. So we can teach our kids that. We can create a culture. We can ask our schools to create a culture, and it's going to be less likely that bullying will happen there. It's still going to happen. I hate to say it. It will. There's no perfect school. Even if the school says bullying doesn't happen here, it does. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is the next step? They come home, and this is the the evolution of the conversation with you in the car. And I know how many times I've heard parents say, well, just ignore them, or, you don't want to rat anybody out, or it's going to make it worse. Parents don't want to go to the school because they don't want to make things worse. I've had this conversation with parents a number of times. It makes me a little bit crazy. What's the next step? What are they doing now?
So you get the buy-in from your child, and you report it, right? And we recommend you report it in writing. You can report it verbally, but then follow up in writing. So, and give as many details as you can that you've been able to extract from your child. On the playground on Wednesday, so and so did this and that. And then if the school responds, you follow up with an email. I understand that you're going to do XYZ. Is that correct? And the XYZ might be, we're going to look into it, or we're going to investigate, or we'll get back to you. Just, keep following up. And I recommend you save all that stuff. Just a chronological order of how all that stuff happens. So the school honestly can't do anything unless they know about it. So, and different schools treat this differently. Sometimes there's a written form that you have to do online. Maybe you go to the teacher. Maybe you start with the playground monitor. It depends on what age of the kids. Maybe you go straight to the assistant vice principal or to the principal. And it is okay to keep going up the chain of command if, reporting it to the teacher you didn't get any feedback or anything. Keep going.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Even up to school boards. And we have done that too. We have gone with families or groups of families to talk to school boards as well.
At what point, so there's more than just the bully and the victim. I think
Mm.
there's there's the
And I'm going to
bystander.
challenge you there. Call them targets.
Okay.
Yeah. Much more empowering to be called a target than than a victim.
Really good.
It's
That's
not my,
really
yeah,
good.
I learned that. So
That's okay. You know what? That just makes it feels better.
yeah, it does.
It totally feels better. Wow. Okay, let's talk about then the roles. So the targets, then there's the bystanders. Do you have different labels for different besides target and bystanders? Like, what role do they play?
So, oh, I love this. So there is, it's Barbara that is on our board. That's the bullying expert. And there's something called the bullying circle. And so it is the target and the bully, right? And then there's all these different characters that support the bully. There might be, they call them the henchmen. That might be the two that are like, I'll do whatever you say, Bob. I got your back. I agree with you. And then there might be some kids below that are more passive, but they're still participating. They're trailing along. And then there's those onlookers that just watch it, but don't do anything. So we kind of keep going all the way around where it's, they're less involved in the actual act. And then we come to something that we call an upstander. And an upstander is that child that's going to intervene somehow. Those kids save lives. They absolutely do. So that is the kid that maybe, to the most extreme part is they get in the middle and like, knock it off, you guys. You're not being funny. I'm going to go walk with you over here. Everybody take a chill pill. That's the extreme, but you don't have to be that kid. You can also be the kid that watched the incident, could be even online, watch the incident and contact the child who was targeted and say, I saw what happened. It's not okay. Do you want to come sit with me at lunch? Do you want to report it together? What can I do to help you? What's going on? How do you feel? That's just as powerful. And that's just, it's all about supporting that child who's being targeted. So we, and parents can teach their kids how to be upstanders. The best way is to be one yourself, right? If you see something that's not great going on, you intervene somehow, or at least you go talk to them afterwards. Hey, I saw that person yell at you at the parking lot. Are you okay? Can I do something for you? Do you want me to call the police? It's interesting with bullying because these kind of behaviors, when they happen to an adult, we get police involved, right? If someone is yelling at me in a parking lot, I can call the police and get someone, or, I can call the clerk in the store or whatever. With kids, we almost downplay it. And it's just as, horrible with our kids. And they just have, it's, and you're absolutely right. We have these parents that are like, well, it's kind of a rite of passage and everybody goes through it. And it's not natural. It's not normal. It's certainly not necessary. It's a learned behavior that can be unlearned or learned in a different way. So, we have to address it. We can't just like you said, those parents that I don't want to rock the boat, right? It's been a good school for my older kid. I don't want to do anything. It's up to you to do something, right? And you get to show your child like you're important. Let's go, we need to report this. Let's go ahead and take care of this. Let's see what they can do for us.
Yeah. I think when they first say anything, just believe them.
Yes.
Just believe them. Done. It's, when they're talking about their identities or they're talking about how they're feeling or they're talking about, just believe them. Start with that.
Yeah. You don't even have to understand. You just have to believe them. That's a great point, Cheryl.
Yeah. Right. Like, how else do we build the trust? And, oh man, I love upstander. I love that word. I love target. Not that I love the target, but I like the change of the term. But upstander, so how do we teach our kids to be upstanders and feel safe? How do we do that?
So, first thing is to mirror it, right? Or to act like an upstander. Talk to them through situations. There's also ways that we can help. I've been through something called a bully proofing class that's really fantastic. So it teaches these kids how to find something that feels good within themselves, they can say. So someone is interacting with them in a positive way. Whatever feels good for them to say, like, if I really cared about what you think, this might affect me or something. There's ways we can teach our kids to be upstanders for themselves. And it's not always easy. And some kids just don't have it in them,
Yeah.
don't have it in to fight back. They're terrified. And that's okay. That's where we have to come in and make sure that, we help take care of them and listen to them. Absolutely. Listen and say you did nothing wrong. This is not okay. It's not okay that someone's picking on you. It's not okay that someone's bullying you. It's not okay that someone's tripped you in the hallway.
Mhm.
And there can be a lot of mental health ramifications for kids that are severely bullied. And the quicker we can identify, the quicker we can report and do something, the more likely they're going to have recovery or have recovery at a faster pace. So it's just, we have to be involved. We
Yeah.
have to, as parents, it's our job. It's our job.
Yeah. And so how do we now cyberbullying? Like,
Mhm.
how do we, we see, multiple, YouTubes and all of that of these poor kids who have taken their lives because of cyberbullying,
Yeah.
like instructing them. And, I was actually watching a documentary the other day where, it's happening in their bedrooms.
Yeah.
And parents have no idea what's happening. No
Right.
idea. Their phones are in their bedrooms and they're having these going down these rabbit hole of terror. And some, the self-harm or completing is just the numbers are astronomical.
Yes.
Is there a different aspect to discovering if your child's being cyberbullied as opposed to an in-person bullying? Are there different aspects of that we need to look for?
So you look for the same behaviors, right? Those big changes in behaviors, because that can happen from cyberbullying too. And I think a misconception sometimes is parents seem to think that cyberbullying is less harmful than physical or verbal bullying. And absolutely, that's not the case. It can be just, I hate to use the word, but deadly, right? Um, Going and telling someone to kill themselves 100 times can have an extreme impact on a child. And there is a law in Texas that said that is now illegal to tell someone to kill themselves. Period. So that's the only state that I know of that has that law. So I'd love to get that here too.
Yeah.
But it's important as parents, and it's tough, but to talk to them about online safety, you know, boy, and all the different platforms like Snapchat. If you take a screenshot, that other person knows immediately, right? So you get another device and take a picture of it. It's important to tell the child to collect evidence. People are snapping them, or Instagram, Facebook, even, which I always think Facebook is for older people, but bullying happens on Facebook
Yep.
too.
Yep.
And TikTok and YouTube, to collect evidence too, but to talk to your child about online safety, and if something's happening, to get off, or to report it if they see it someone happening to somebody else while they're online or in a forum, to report that as well, to gather evidence. It's and honestly, if the relationship, at least in Colorado, if the relationship with those kids is through the school is required to do something. Another thing too, and most states have this, we do in Colorado. Here it's called Safe to Tell, but a lot of states have a way for kids to anonymously report things.
Yeah. We had that too, a Google form. It was fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So teach your kids how to use that. Unfortunately, sometimes it gets used as a bullying. People do false reporting and things like that. But still, there's certain things that then when they're reported, the school they have to do something immediately, especially if it's self-harm or things like that. But bullying as well. Go ahead and teach the kids to use that app, or that form or whatever. Make the phone call. Kids don't use the phone very often, but you know what I mean. Usually there's a text aspect to it as well.
Well, it's very similar to, I'm going to use the analogy of, for us, it's Children's Aid Society or the Child Protection. I'm not sure what what you actually call it there. We call it children's aid or family and children's services. But if you suspect anything as a teacher, as an adult, but
Yeah,
the law is we have to report.
absolutely.
And you know what? Then it's on them. So just
Yeah.
report. If it
Yeah.
turns out to be bullshit, fine. But if it's not, you're saving somebody's life.
That you could be.
And
Absolutely.
and it's up to them. If you choose to report it to the police and they find nothing, okay, they find nothing. But you did your due diligence. And I think that goes for every adult, every kid. Just report it and let the professionals decide if you're right or wrong. You don't have the education or the experience to decipher whether it's crap or it's not crap. So just report it. Like that makes it easy. Just do it.
Yeah. 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 And I know we have the, it's mandatory reporting. I was a teacher for a little while, and I was instructed, like, if you suspect, if you see, if you hear something, you report it. And then, they come back and interview you if they suspect or what, but it's still, it's none of my business after that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally am 100% for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. I want to ask about moving schools because I want to know, at what point do you feel like, and I totally understand that you would 1000%. At what point, see, what worries me about when parents pull their kids out of schools, and not typically for bullying, for any reason, but they're struggling with something and they pull them out and then they put them in another school and the same thing happens. That scares me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the kid's going, okay, I'm the common denominator here. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. And unfortunately, so with the family, we provide wraparound support once the parents contact us, right? And I'll be honest, most of the parents that contact us, it is dire. It's not like it happened yesterday and this kid's kind of bummed. It's like been going on for a while. We're kind of, unfortunately, we're sometimes more of a last resort. And sometimes, and it depends on the family and the situation, and more importantly, the child than anything else. Sometimes the best solution is to remove that child from the school. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're right. Sometimes they go to a new school and guess what? They're targeted again. We had one family that, boy, we actually got a restraining order against a middle school kid, which is absolutely unheard of. It was that bad. And so, she had a restraining order. She no longer went to the school, but her friends took over. They ended up moving to a different town. And, she's in college now. And she just started freshman year of college and is doing fantastic. But it sends a message. Some schools or some kids excel doing online school. And there is social aspects to that too. I know a lot of the programs, there's meetups once or twice a week where they do the art museum, or they have they might have some kind of, social activity or something.
Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking. Some kids, unfortunately, I will be honest, in our organization, I'd say between 30 and 40% of our children that we've worked with are on the spectrum. Those kids are relentlessly bullied. They're not understood by a lot of, I don't want to just say kids, but adults too. Kids with ASD are wonderful, unique people. And, if we can teach our kids, like, some kids just behave, they interact with the world differently. It's okay. We can still be friends. We don't have to be friends with them, but we can be friendly and kind and with respect, so it's heartbreaking. It's there's certain populations of kids that are bullied at a much higher rate than others. So we do a lot of work trying to get into those populations, with neurodiverse, LGBTQ plus, BIPOC, certain schools where, I grew up in an environment where only like maybe 30% of the kids looked like me. We had just a smorgasbord of of cultures and religions. And I'm so grateful for growing up in that environment. And I moved to Colorado and it was completely different. I'm like, where are my people? And, but I had that upbringing. And I think that's, I think it's important that these kids, even if everybody that they go to school with looks like them, or most people, to understand that just because someone looks different or even sounds different, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And you bring up kids on the spectrum, and I want to say kids on the spectrum and kids who have been diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome, and there's a few different diagnoses where they don't feel empathy.
Right.
And so these are the times when, if you find yourself being the target, can you ask some questions? Because sometimes the person acting like the bully is the person with the diagnosis who doesn't know how to communicate that whole factor in there. So it's a bit of a disclaimer here, because we can't always teach empathy, but we can ask questions about the person displaying the bully behavior. Maybe we ask some more questions about that. And then there are, skills to be taught for sure. But, it's not, you won't always see the empathy in that situation. So those are, again, questions to ask. Always be curious. I feel like you always need to be curious, because nobody sets out in life to be a jerk. Nobody sets out in life to scare people or not have friends because they just want to be like, that's not what we intently do. I think we are kind until we can't be, until, we are friendly until we can't. There's something standing in the way. And it's, being able to work that out, as opposed to, oh, they're just an ass. That's not how it works. We're not born asses, as you said, right?
No.
Oh man, I could just talk forever about this, because I just feel like, oh, so I just want to go back for 1 second to, if we absolutely must remove them from their school and they do go into a different school, is there a therapeutic piece behind that before this happens again, before they become a target again? Is there some kind of therapy? Is there conversation? Is there something that can happen there?
So I'm not a mental health professional.
Mm-hmm.
But there is some strategies that we use as an organization. So if they are a child with ASD, chances are they have an IEP or a 504.
Mm-hmm.
You have things written into that to help protect them from bullying.
Good point.
So, and I will tell you, if a child is severely bullied enough, they will qualify for an IEP or a 504, because they will have, they'll have stress or depression or anxiety. So the IEPs and 504s can be written around that. And there again, you can write in things to help protect them from bullying, whatever that might be. So it's not a foolproof strategy, but and once a child is under a 504, an IEP, or IEP specifically, it's now called harassment. And there's more laws in the country about harassment than bullying. So that's in our favor too. It's strategy. It doesn't fix the internal piece. We are strong believers that most kids that are bullied should receive some kind of mental health assistance. We have a litany of organizations across the state that we recommend, that, especially that deal with trauma and things like that, because it's very traumatic. And, a day does not go by where I'm out in the public and someone asks me what I do, and I tell them, and they can bring up a story of when they were a kid, and it's still with them. And sometimes, these adults will say, God, it still haunts me.
Yeah.
They're holding their brand new child and like, I don't want to send my kid to school. This happened to me, and I'm so afraid that they're going to have to deal with that too. It's a very real, it's one of the top concerns for parents. I think it's number 2, of parents of school age children, is bullying.
Yeah. Well, connection is everything, right? Connection is everything. If you don't feel connected for whatever reason, that's everything. And we know that through our beautiful pandemic we just went through.
I was just going to say, COVID taught us that in a
absolutely
big, bad way.
Yes. So can we, as a teacher, what's crossing my mind is when you were talking about the IEPs, I was spec ed specialist for 25 years. So the IEP is very familiar. I think I could write them in my sleep. And I love how you brought that in. And I also would say, as a teacher, I would so appreciate if a parent picked up the phone in August and said, listen, this is how the year went last year. Just very confidential. And I would tell my kid I'm doing this. This is a confidential conversation, but I want you to be protected. But you need to be a part of it. This is part of you standing up for yourself, is me saying, this happened last year. Could you keep an eye so that they're grabbing things before it gets too late, and they can, once they're aware, once a teacher's aware, you can bet they're in this profession because they love kids.
Yes.
And they become mama bears. I know I sure did. So that's a great conversation to have. If this is an experience you've had, just pick up the phone and let them know. So it's not, they're always on the radar, which is, I think, really.
And same with switching schools, right? You talk to the administration and you talk to the new teacher. Hey, we're attending your school this year because this happened at that school.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that my child has a good experience, a good, starting out. What can we all do together? And how are we going to communicate, right?
Yeah.
So if teacher says, oh, this happened, make sure they, please contact me, tell me what you did or tell me how they behaved or, so we can work on some skills at home, right? So you can work with your child when Joe says that to you tomorrow, what are you going to say back to him? Or, and they come up with their own ideas, right? Whatever feels good. You don't feed it to them. They get to choose. Yeah, let's role play that. So say like I'm Joe and I tap you on the shoulder again. What are you going to say to Joe? So, there's those skills that you can help. It's easier to do this with younger kids than older, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in middle school, they're like, yeah, you're about the, mom and dad become very stupid and that's okay. Yeah. But, and you can start these skills when they're young. So, kind of build up that armor for them.
Yeah. And can you, I'm just thinking it would be so helpful to even share any experience you've had growing up or that you're having at work. Oh man, this, and explain what it actually is that's happening to you at work or has happened so they understand, oh, this is not right. That is how, and my mom understands this or my dad understands this because they've gone through it. And so, in any point of a conversation, the kid's going, I've seen it. I'm an upstander. I'm just watching this. I'm the target, whatever role they would play in that, they would recognize it and maybe be able to have more of a conversation about it.
I agree.
It could be traumatic for you as an adult. I get it. But you know what? Imagine what help you're doing, the benefits you're providing to your kid to be honest and vulnerable about what it is and how it felt.
Absolutely.
Oh, I feel like I could talk all day. So let's just talk about, do you have resources? I'll put everything in the show notes, but books to read, articles, podcasts, anything that you could share with our audience?
So one of my favorite books is written by Barbara Coloroso. So she's that woman that sits on our board.
Yes,
I usually have it right at my disposal.
Oh my gosh.
It's The Bullied, and the Not So Innocent Bystander. You know her too?
I've been to all her talks 20 years ago here.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Jelly and the brick wall and the jellyfish parent. Oh my goodness. Yes. Love her.
She's incredible. Yes. So I recommend that book. And honestly, most of the parents that come and seek support from us, we send them the book for free. And she does such a good job of explaining what it is and then having stories interwoven. So, and it's a book that I don't recommend you read cover to cover, but you kind of skim through tell me what makes a bullying. And she has a whole chapter on how kids become bullies. So it's just fabulous. There's a wonderful podcast out there called Breaking Bullying. And he's fabulous. He is, the host is a martial arts teacher in Minnesota. He's actually running for the school board. So if I was out there, I'd go campaign for him. He's wonderful. And he brings in all kinds of guests, including adults that bullied as children, right? So you get to, a good look at what both sides. And, it's just bullying prevention. Has teachers on. I've been on there once. Barbara's been on there. Those are a couple of my favorite resources. Our website is chock full of blogs. Most of them have been written by me. I love to do the research. So it's all different kinds of, what makes an upstander, what are policies, procedures, and programs, like why those are so important for schools. I'm trying to think, articles specific for AST, autism spectrum disorder, articles about LGBTQ plus community. So the link between suicide and bullying. So it's you can kind of go in there and learn whatever might interest you or what questions you might have. Also our information. And we do talk to parents from out of state all the time. We can offer some basic advice to anybody.
Excellent.
Yeah. And if you're looking for a resource for wherever you want, some ideas, there's really we found one other organization like us in the States. So, and that's the other one's in Texas, and they work under that law that I was talking about before. With it's illegal to tell somebody to go kill themselves, so they started an organization kind of around that. So,
and word on the street is there's a fundraiser.
There is. We're having our first gala.
About it.
Yeah, so the gala is called Belong. Very obvious reasons, right? So. If you're in a place where you belong, bullying is much, much less likely to happen. So that will be on October 10th in Arvada, Colorado. And boy, we're looking for folks to sponsor us, but just to come and celebrate, to take a stand against bullying, and as well as, to fundraise. We have some very important programs. We do a lot of education. We do that advocacy work. And we're hoping to branch out and kind of go upstream a little bit and work with those school administrators and teach them why it is so gosh darn important to identify bullying and then do something about it. So we have some big goals, and unfortunately it needs, it costs money to get those to fruition. So that's why we're having the fundraiser.
That's amazing. We need so many more people like you. You are such a gift. This has just been a great conversation. I'm so grateful to have met you and share your story. Oh my goodness. Everything will be in the show notes for the listeners. And anything I didn't ask that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'm gonna finish with one of my favorite statistics. Yes, there are some good statistics around bullying, and this goes back to the upstander. So bullying stops within 10 seconds, 57% of the time when someone intervenes on behalf of the child being targeted. So if you don't think you can make a big difference, by God, you can. So if we can teach our to and like I said, it doesn't have to be getting in the middle. It can just be that support afterwards. It could be the kid that, you see something going on, you don't laugh. You do not laugh, because that's not okay. That gives license to that kid that's performing those bullying acts. You don't laugh and you go up afterwards. I'm so sorry. That's not okay.
Yeah. Golden nugget after golden nugget. Thank you so, so much, Dru. I'm so grateful for this. And listeners, if there's an episode to share, this is the one. Everyone has either experienced on one end, another end, or even on the peripheral. We need to stop this. I mean, we absolutely need to stop this. And if it saves one kid, then it's worth it. So just please share. Thank you for listening. See you next time.